let's go ahead and get started. I wanted to kind of review last week and see if anyone, well, first of all, to see if anyone has any questions about what we did last week, or if you did the homework, which was about, well, it's all about family of origin, right? The nurturing and chaotic home, the peacekeeper versus the peacemaker. I'm going to talk a little bit about those. Maybe it'll just help give you like a reminder of what you were thinking about if you did it. So let me just officially start the class. So this is week 2 of the Step Family class for Journey to Oneness. And I'm Kelly Messick. And we have Donald and Michelle back with us this week, and Diana back with us this week. And Tony is going to join Diana. So looking back at last week, we talked about the grief loss cycle and the way that we relate to one another, and then the team up. You might remember that. We had the sports team analogy. We went through it rather quickly, but of course it's written out really well in your manuals. So, but the nurturing chaotic home and the peacekeeper, peacemaker, they're just little inventories for you to do to kind of get a little snapshot of what you think your role in the marriage or the relationship is like. Because remember, we have some married people and some premaritals on. And what you really want to do this for your home, but you might even want to do it for your family of origin. And the reason I say this is because when two people come together and they have two different families of origin, they might have thought that their family of origin was quote unquote normal or fine. And then they marry someone who looks at it and says, no, I don't think that's very good. And often the inventory that we give couples, often there's the question that says, my family of origin my parents were a good role model for parenting. And the person says their parents were, and the person they're in a relationship with says they were not. And it's so common, it's like more common than them agreeing that they were good. So I think, well, this means that we have different sensibilities, we have different perspectives. And so one person might have a completely different view of, children should be seen and not heard, let's say, for instance. They were raised like that. Respect is the ultimate, it's the most important thing. Another person may have been raised in a more lax home where children had a voice and were allowed to speak their mind, and there was lots of discussion. And so, right away, imagine a step family like that. And so then you just say, okay, what do we as a couple want our parenting to be like? And how can we come together? How can we meet together? Somewhere in the middle. Obviously, it's not going to be exactly even all the time, but there's a way where both of the couple can say, I want to come together with you on this. I don't want to dig my heels in. I don't want it, to be a division between us. And that's what that nurturing chaotic home or the peacemaker, peacekeeper, those can help you say, wow, my home wasn't very nurturing, or my home, was really nurturing. I had such good parents. Or maybe you found out, and why don't I just go ahead and give you the difference between a peacekeeper and a peacemaker. Peacekeepers are about trying to keep everything okay, not have any conflict, trying to keep someone maybe from getting upset, getting disappointed, discouraged, whatever it is, you're working overtime to try and keep the peace. Sometimes that actually goes over into trying to keep someone from being angry and from blowing up. Some folks grew up in that kind of a home where it really had to be Everything had to be a certain way or there would be a blow up. And so you want to look and say, was I the peacekeeper in my family? Or maybe you were the peacemaker, which is what is more Christ-like. So being a peacemaker is what Jesus teaches us to do. Sometimes that requires conflict, right? You've got to enter into a conflict and resolve it to find peace, not avoid it and run from it. So that family of origin, those two family of origin inventories can help you to talk to one another. And I just want to emphasize that this is meant to be a way for you to find a new way to do it. Unless, of course, you agree on everything. And then that you get to go, what is it? Pass go and collect $200. That's amazing. But if it's not the case, then you want to be able to come together. And I just can't stress that enough, because especially when only one person has children, they have had this relationship with those children since before you came along, most of the time. And so they have a lot more to consider. They have a lot more equity, in that relationship with the kids. And so we have to say, okay, so, I think that the step parent then has to really listen to what the other person is saying. And then the biological parent has to say, so how does that affect you? How does that work out for you? And then you begin to make a plan where you remember what we said last week, where the coach and the owner talk in the locker room, not in front of the kids. Super important to, as much as you can. Believe me, guys, this is never going to look perfect. Like, it's always going to be a work in progress, right? Right, my two couples that have been there for a while. But you want it to be that where you say, like, what do we need to do? How can we find a middle ground? I don't know did I say last week about the couple that she had never had kids? I'll just tell you again. Maybe you don't remember. So they were getting married. She had never had kids, and they were both like 50 years old. He had two like 10 to 12-year-old kids, and she was kind of like not sure how she was going to do. Well, they had the opportunity. They had the wherewithal to make her a room. So this is not their bedroom. This is her own sitting room. And the husband who had the kids, he was smart enough to say, I think this could be really good for us. And so he created a sitting room for her that no one was allowed to go into, unless they asked, of course, but it was her place to go. Who wouldn't want one of those, right? But I just thought that was so creative. And, like I said, some people don't have the room to do that or the wherewithal, but the idea is that this person is coming into a completely new situation, and it's going to be really, an adjustment for her. So we want to make it as smooth as possible. Those are the kinds of things that you want to do. You want to say, how can I make it better for you? And again, this doesn't always happen, but if both people are willing to say that and come together, then you're more likely to make progress. And so the difficulty comes when one or both of the couple digs their heels in and says, my way's the way. This is the only way. And so that's what we're hoping tonight. We will be able to, you guys will ask questions and you'll give us scenarios so that we can say, this is something that's important. And this we might not answer your question or tell you what to do, but we'll give you that perspective that maybe you need to move forward. So let's see. Now I'm going to stop and ask were there any questions from last week that you want to bring before we get started on this week? And Donald and Michelle, you're welcome to chime in. you want to answer? Everybody got it so clearly? Okay. Well, you know, if you think of something, chime in. All right, so I'm already running a little late, but I want to make sure and show you something about the disc inventory. So we sent you the link to take the disc inventory, and the reason that we give that as a tool is because, in case you didn't know, you two are not exactly the same. We all are very different. The disc inventory offers a lot of different personality types, and that to look at and say, you know, this is what I'm like. And then if you remember, if you took it, you'll know that you were also asked, what is your fiance or spouse like? And so the thing about this is then it puts them together, and you get to see, let me just use my husband and I see myself this way, he sees me maybe a different way. And what that doesn't mean that I'm wrong or he's wrong. That means what I would want to know why he sees me that way. I would want to know what it is that he's experiencing, because I might be thinking of myself at work in ministry. He may be thinking of me at home. Guess what, you guys? I'm a little different both places, and you may be too. And so when you're thinking about that, it's a springboard for conversation. It's a springboard to say, well, tell me why you see me that way. Not correcting. You know, the point of this is not to correct the other person and get them to see it right or wrong. The point of this exercise is to say, how does my spouse or fiance experience me? And, you know, is any of that true? Because sometimes we have blind spots. I've got plenty. Believe me, doing this work all these years, that's how I've learned what my blind spots are. Because I bring this stuff home to my husband. He's like, you're not doing that good, you know? Like, you got some work to do. And he's right. And so it's not my place to bring it to him and say, you need to do this, or this is what it's like. It's me to say, how are you experiencing me? What do you, what do you feel like when I say this or do that, whatever. For the disc inventory for step families, it can be really helpful in your parent plan for you to maybe give guesses as to what your children are, so that you can refine your plan a little more. Again, several of you have quite a few children. And, you know, I think we all know our kids, but maybe if we helped the person that's going to be helping to parent them understand them and know them better, that could be a help. So.
Billy, can I ask a question real quick, or should I wait?
Nope, go for it.
So with like kind of looking at what the scale says about your kid, like trying to gauge like what your child could be, is that the tool? Because like you said, like I have several kids, right? So if I do that for each kid, like how do you, is there like a good way to kind of gauge when you have so many, you know, kids to consider?
What I would say is learning about it for you and Rodney, your husband, that would be the beginning. So you understand, you get to, you know, learn about that. And like with any other temperament thing, you read about it, like you read what the descriptions are. So I would start there, and then I would start with the older kids, because a lot of folks say that with the disc inventory, most teenagers or young children are high I's. You can maybe just take note of that. In other words, it's all about them. Like it's all about having fun, being with their friends, you know, what they get to do. So a lot of people think that we start out as I's and then our personalities develop as we go, but that is not always true. My son growing up was always an S. He was always the steady guy. So, you know, we just kind of, you know, we figure it out. But I don't think we have it available for you to take for each of your children. Like it's, it's not really available for that. So it would be more like you looking at each description, which I'm going to show you where to find in case you didn't. Each description and see which one you go, oh, this really, this is probably theirs. If they're older, like in their teens, they probably could take it. Maybe we can arrange to get one for them to take. But, or you could read the descriptions and let them pick which one they think they're like. And then you can say, that's really not how I experience you. But that's moving further along. So let me see.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let me see about sharing. I want to share the inventory. Where are you? Well, give me a second. Anything you want to say about that, Donald, Michelle, while I'm finding my...
Yeah, Born, I may have heard your question just a little bit differently. And forgive me if I heard it incorrectly. What I heard was, how do you respond when each child is different? And for me, you parent each child differently, right? And you parent to those personalities, because as a parent, what I think we're called to do is to create an environment where the child becomes the best reflection of Christ they can. And to achieve that is different for each child based upon their personal makeup. And that's why when we start talking about how do you do things equally and fairly and all that fun stuff, I grew up in a workplace where I learned very quickly that treating people fairly does not mean treating them equally. So that's what I heard in your question. And I don't know if that's good, bad, or indifferent, but it becomes truly the work of, if you will, managing each person differently.
So that is a part of my question. I think it's a twofold kind of question, where when you realize your kids have different personalities and you want to, parent to the personality, but if the other parent, is not familiar with that personality or accustomed to parenting to the personality, and as Kelly was saying, they come from a different background, how do you get your other parent to acknowledge that this is the child's personality and to parent accordingly, because I think that's where division comes in.
Yep.
You know what I mean? When
Absolutely.
Both parents can't agree to parent to the personality. Absolutely. So it was kind of like a twofold question. So yeah. Thank you.
And I think that's a good question. And we experience that daily.
I was going to say this afternoon. Yeah. So it's hard. It's hard. And I guess, especially the more kids you have, it can feel overwhelming to do this parent plan and look at the disc inventory and all of that for each child. But really what you're trying to do is just get to know them. It's really about trying to understand relationally how they connect. And so I guess just give yourself a little grace in the process and know that it's going to take time. It doesn't come quickly, and that they're going to continue to change as they're going through their life, as they're growing. But this just gives you sort of an outline or a framework on where you might start to come from, especially as that step parent coming in. It allowed me to kind of say, okay, Donald's let me know who this kid is. Now I kind of know how to approach it. And then you kind of do your trial and error from there. So I guess I just say, give yourself grace, give yourself time, and understand that this is just a beginning. It's a launch off place where sometimes we're always searching for how do we start. So this is a great way to kind of start.
Yeah, only other thing I'd add to that, Born, is that let's not forget the two roles. each parent has two roles, right? And where Michelle's daughter's concerned, my role is to observe. My role isn't necessarily to be in each and every situation. So sometimes it really doesn't matter that I don't relate to that kid's makeup because I'm observing. And then it goes back to Kelly's question before about how does that child impact our relationship? See, that's where I become very focused in the conversation with Michelle about how it affects the two of us, not how that child affects me, because that's not necessarily my number one relationship, right? Christ is first, second. So I'm able to put some of my angst about the fact that I don't understand that child's makeup to the side, and I'm able to focus on what's that doing to me, and then that's where I have to communicate with Michelle about here's what it's doing to me and here's what it's doing to our relationship.
So long answer, but there you go.
Yeah. And I would add pray.
Thank you.
You know, one of the things that we are, we lost somebody. One of the things that we are saying to you is, and I'll say it again, is what would you like to be different? And you might not always want to ask that question, right? Because it's hard to say, to give kind of like, you know, free rein, you know, somebody to say, well, I want this or that. And then you have to say, well, you know, I hear what you're saying. Tell me more about how you think this could work. You know, that kind of, so you like work your way through, and then it might be I don't know if we can do that. I don't know if that's possible. So let me go ahead and share this so you can see what I have for you. I mean, the explanation we have, and then we'll probably move into something else. But let's just start here. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so this is what you should see. That I'm signed into to a disk inventory, somebody's disk inventory. And what I want you to do, I'm gonna have to move this, hold on. You guys can still see it? Okay. So what you see here over on the left is view reports. There's demographics. I think, yeah. Both of these people have done it. So the Limry Disc self view and both views. Remember I said that, that it asks you about yourself and the other person. So I really want to look at both views. This is really helpful. What you see here is this is the woman's view of herself, and this is the man's view of the woman. So she sees herself as a high SI. He sees her as an SC. Actually, it's not that far off, but we get to a kind of like observe that. And then the man views himself. This one is very different, isn't it? So the man views himself as an SC, and the woman views him as a DC.
Hey, Kelly, when I'm looking at it, all I can see is Limry Disc report both views, but it just says woman's view of herself. Like,
oh, did Rodney take his part?
Oh, so I'm just looking at your screen. I was thinking that you were showing on your screen the.
Okay, well, it looks like I need to share.
I didn't know if you.
Thank you for saying something. That's what.
Yeah.
So are you? Let's see. Now does it say Limry Disc report both views?
Okay, now I can see it. Now we can see multiple.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I had it on my screen, so I was thinking you guys saw the same thing. Okay. So I'll just go again. There's the woman's view of herself and the man's view of the woman. So those weren't that far off. They both say she's a high S. And then he kind of spread it out. He kind of said, you know, she's everything, but she really sees herself this way. So the question here is going to be for the woman to say, you know, tell me about what you see here. You know, maybe she sees herself as very social. The I is a very social number or letter. He sees her as less social. Maybe there's a reason behind that. Maybe there's not, but you get to talk about it. And then, but like I said here, the man's view of himself versus the woman's view of the man is very different. And so he would want to ask her, tell me what you mean when you say you see me this way. And again, this is a really big difference here on the S, and also this D. She sees him as very directive, very probably dominant, and he sees himself as a lot less. He sees himself more as. So what I want you to see here is this little link down here. Did anybody tell me, did any of you see this little link down here that says explanation of the disc results? Does anyone click on that and see it? I'm curious about this just for.
I did not. Okay. I did not.
So I'm going to click on it and show it to you. You guys can log back in and you'll find the exact same thing. This is like a, you know, like a really great little lesson on the disc inventory. It gives a description of like this is the D. So these are just kind of general good things about the D, the high D. And then next to it, it has human extremes or areas that can get kind of out of whack. And that we have that for each letter, D, I, S, and C. And so then there's also some teaching on biblical humanity, spiritual identity, good news. Then we also have the combinations. So let's see, I'm usually an IS, sometimes an ID. And so we get these, when I say sometimes, over the years I've tested different. So then you get a little description of that for you. We have that for you. This explains and gives you a form to fill out so you can look at it and some questions to answer. And also this is really helpful. This says on page 10, it gives you descriptions of the letters. So y'all, when you were saying, you know, how do I know about my kids? And I said, you probably can't take the disc for them or get it for them. You can look through these and maybe try and see which things describe your child. So there's a lot of combos here, like I said. And then you get to create a relationship assessment. So I am not going to go into any more detail on this tonight. I just wanted you to know that if you were thinking, well, now I took this inventory, what do I do with it? You click on that little link and it's got everything you need to know there. If by chance you want to talk to me about it, I would love to sit down with you and talk more about it and how it would apply to your relationship. So, you know, there are lots of tools out there for personality, right? There's not one that's the best. They're all good. The idea is to gain self-awareness. If I have blind spots and everyone else sees it and I don't, you know, and your kids may see them too. I've had so many conversations with my son where he says, Mom, I live in our house. Like, I know what goes on there. You think I don't know? So, you know, like, it's really good to know that. That's what the point of this is: self-awareness, sharing, talking, coming up with ideas to maybe change things. So, okay, any other questions on that? Good questions, Born. Let's see. All right. A little late, Diane and Tony, but thought maybe your little guy would get sleepy.
Okay, you may hear some squeals and interruptions, but.
Well, and do you want to wait a little while, or you guys ready to go?
No, we can go.
Okay. All right, I'll just introduce you real quick just so everyone knows. Diane and Tony went through our premarital program how many years ago now? 3, 4?
About 4 years. 4 years ago, and married 3.
Uh-huh. And so I remember them from that time, and I did their wedding. It's really amazing journey that they went through. And so I asked them to come and to share a little bit about theirs. Now, remember, theirs is very unique, but I think they had some really important experiences. And so, Diane and Tony, would it be okay if people wanted to ask you questions after you share?
Yeah, absolutely.
So keep that in mind. Jot down your questions if you have any. And go.
Okay. Well, hi everyone. So we do have an unusual story, and perhaps it's useful to say that we're not necessarily your average blended family, but we've had an amazing journey. So we when we met, Tony had 2 kids, and I not only did not have children, but if I were to be really candid, would say I had no interest in them. I was not child oriented. I was very career oriented. And so for me, this was a roller coaster ride, an amazing one, in which I had to go from no experience, and I mean I'd never babysat children, I had no nieces or nephews yet, to go from that to becoming a parent. First, of Tony's children, and then a couple more, and I love it. So God can completely transform you from who you think you are to someone completely different. And that aside, I mean, maybe you want to talk a little bit about what led up to our wedding.
Okay, so when we met, I had been divorced for 9 years. My children at the time were 19 and 14. And so we got married on January 6th. And at the beginning of November, Diana's father passed away. Mm-hmm. And then 2 weeks later, I got a call at work from my daughter. She had found her mother dead, and she had committed suicide. And she had been, the body had been laying for 3 days before my daughter found her, so it was not in the best shape. So, and that's 6 weeks before our marriage. And so we transitioned from being a couple where Diana had no parenting experience, and I had been shared parenting with my ex for almost a decade, to all of a sudden that we were going to be sole parents. And my kids, especially my daughter, were suddenly in a position where the only mother figure they were going to have in their life then was Diana. Mm-hmm. And, for my daughter, especially being 14, just starting out high school, there's a lot of things that, high schoolers go through. And so there was a big learning curve for Diana, especially, to suddenly jump on. So, not only did we have the trauma of the event, but then, there's the psychological response from my daughter. My son, I think, handled it differently. But, my daughter was living with us full time then. Mm-hmm. And we are in Granville, and she had been going to school in Lancaster. And so and her mother was close enough to where she could bus. So with them, we had the whole transportation issue with, you know, if we were living in Granville, getting up early in the morning, driving her every day, and then, you know, arranging pickup time because, you know, both of us work. And so, you know, there was a lot of transitional things. And, you know, my daughter did transfer to a local school here in Granville. And, you know, it's been, you know, for Diana's had the bigger, I guess, growth out of the two of us in just dealing with being the step parent, you know, suddenly.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. No, I would say that, you know, we've both learned a lot and we've come a long way. I don't know that if you had asked us right before we got married what we foresaw, it would have been impossible to answer. And I think, I mean, we've certainly learned that the strength of the marriage is that has to be kind of at the center. Christ is there as kind of the foundation for us, and it makes all the difference. You know, some of the things that came up last week, I would just echo that things take time, and we sometimes have a desire to force things because maybe it's more comfortable. You know, we want to all get along. We want it to feel comfortable with people that we're just getting to know. And you'll get there, but it won't happen overnight, and that's okay. That's part of the process, for sure. And, you know, and suddenly you are this amazing new family, and you'll create your own traditions and your own cultures, and it will sometimes be really messy, but it'll also be beautiful if you give it a chance. So.
Do we have any questions?
I just wanted to say thank you for sharing the layers, you know, the layers of complexity and emotional, like responsibility and that tension, because it's real, you know, and it's a hopeful story, right? You know, because I think trauma, you know, is not an uncommon thing in blended families. And so just to see that the way that you kind of handle that. And I do have one question in light of that, in light of the trauma piece, is that, you know, how do you manage, Diana, knowing that trauma is there? And if there ever has been kind of like an act of aggression, you know, towards you, in light of the fact that, you know, of the trauma, like how did you handle that? And what were some ways that you were able to bring, you know, your bonus baby back to center? Like, how did you do that?
I would say that, yeah, I think, you know, personalities are always a factor. And, you know, I think especially at the beginning, I'll use your term bonus baby. I mean, my bonus daughter and I, we had very different personalities, and Tony and I did a lot to use the language from last week of doing battle in the locker room. There was a lot of that and negotiation. I brought a very different kind of awareness about what I considered the right way to parent, not really from my experience, but from how I grew up. And, you know, Tony had his way of doing things. So we really had to wrangle about those things. But I mean, for me, and I won't say I always got it right. I mean, we never do. We're parents, right? We fail, we make mistakes. But I think trying to be constant, trying to be there, trying to just provide some kind of stability in a time of incredible crisis and confusion. I mean, for everybody, you know, I just lost my father, and I thought I didn't get a whole lot of time to process that because it was sort of trauma upon trauma. So, you know, I think in the end, it really came down to just time time and patience and maybe Tony and I always trying to model again that you know, we're in this for the long haul, and neither of us is going anywhere. You know, we're here, we'll be here, and to really just show that every day counts for a lot. I mean, aside from what we say and what we do, I mean, to just be present and available.
Tony, I'd like to ask you a question. And I don't, by no stretch of the imagination, do I intend to minimize the phenomenal events that took place in your family. However, if we look at kind of what we talked about last week, we have loss, right? We have detrimental loss, but in each of these relationships, there's a sense of loss. There's a sense of lack of stability, and then there's a maybe a loss of trust. So obviously, what you're dealing with is drastically more than what anyone else. So please give me grace in that. My question to you becomes, as the biological parent, how did you interact with the children, put Diane in a place where she could build the trust, where she could show the stability? Was there anything that you found really beneficial between your interaction with the biological children that helped her from a step parenting?
Well, I think we laid the groundwork for that early on, when we were, you know, getting serious about our relationship, and, you know, it was looking like things were heading towards marriage. Wanted to do an introduction, so, you know, it wouldn't be cold turkey, hey, here's your new stepmom. So, you know, Diana had some familiarity with the kids and the kids with her. And, you know, one of the things that stuck out to me, you know, after the death of the children's biological mother, was my daughter turning to me and saying, well, it looks like Diana's my only mom now. And so there was sort of an anticipation from her end that Diana would be there for that role. Now, Diana was going, you know, through her own grief with her father being just so recently, you know, passed. And, you know, also dealing with our family grief as well. So as the biological parent, I tried to shoulder a lot of that for her. And there was a lot of, you know, heavy lifting, both figuratively and physically. And my son was my best man at our wedding. And for our rehearsal, I literally had to carry him into the church because he was so emotionally distraught. And, you know, there were times where, you know, the grief was, and the stress was getting to everybody. But, you know, I think, you know, as any believer, you know, we find that strength in Christ and through the Holy Spirit. And, you know, sometimes we can't even explain, you know, where it comes from. You know, it just comes flying at you like a pterodactyl comes flying out of the screen. But you know, the Holy Spirit always provides. And, you know, moving forward, once we were married and together as a household, you know, there's a lot of, I guess, sharing of experience and just giving advice and feedback, and, you know, also just allowing Diana her room to develop her role on her own, because, you know, she is a unique personality, very different from their biological mom, different from me. And I think the best thing we've done for this, and whether their biological mom was still around or not, I think the best thing that we've done for the kids is to to show them the strength of our relationship so that they could see that, oh, hey, dad is in a really good place. Which, you know, when kids have witnessed divorce, unfortunately, you know, sometimes they witness words between their parents that they shouldn't have to. And, you know, they know there's hard feelings, even if, you know, both parents are doing the best effort to put the, you know, sunny face on things and never to try to paint the other parent in a negative light. They read your mood, and even if you don't give word to it. But when you are in a good relationship, I know from a lot of friends and family who have gone through divorce and have seen like the second marriage be something really strong, that it's a real inspiration for the children of divorce. And, you know, that's what we're trying our best to mirror for them, and have gotten positive feedback from the kids on that, on, you know, how much they like us together, and, you know, what a good match we are.
Love that. Good job, Tony. Yeah. You know, I was just going to say that there are other details that really aren't important to share here, but a lot of other changes that have come their way in their family. And, you know, that like what Diane, what you said about we never could have known. One of the things that I love to pieces of encouragement I like to give folks who are creating a step family is we don't know what God can do. And that you have there the opportunity to create something really beautiful for yourselves and for the children. It's, you know, it's a reflection of the kingdom of God. Think about, you know, talk about a bonus baby, being willing to take someone else's child into your home, to create a home, to, you know, to say, you know, this is our life. This is our life. We're going to live this together. That's the kingdom of God. And so while divorce is never God's, you know, choice or preference, right? He's with us through it all. He's there when we're going through that process, when, you know, when we're single again, you know, for whatever the reason was of the breakup, then he's also there to help you to say, is this a really good thing for my kids, for me to create this new family? And I would say, from my perspective, 20 years helping couples get married, often the parents think, oh, the kids will be fine. Not often, maybe, let's say 50% of the time. They say, oh, they'll be fine. You know, well, Diane and Tony learned that that may not be the case. You know, there are lots of things that happen and that go on. And I think I know of some other things in the lives of folks here, but when you say, no, we are wanting to create this, and then you go from there. I think one question was asked, you know, about like how that we can have equality, and Donald mentioned that earlier, that's not what we're going for. It's for everybody to be, you know, like the Brady Bunch, right? Anybody remember the Brady Bunch? I hope I'm not dating myself too much. But here's another example. One of the authors that we recommend is Ron Deal. And he says a blended family is kind of a misnomer because it's never that smooth. He talks about it being more like a fruit salad. You know, like, you know, that canned fruit salad where it's all mixed together. The fruit is all still intact, but it's kind of pink because of the, you know, the cherries, they're the strongest color. And so we are going to, you know, we're going to take on flavors of each other. And anyway, it's not necessarily going to be blended so that everybody looks the same. We're going to remain ourselves